My parents stole the $68,000 my grandpa left me to fund my sister's dream, treated me like I didn't exist, but what I did next shattered their illusion. I, a 28-year-old male, grew up in Iowa. My dad worked in sales for a manufacturing company that made industrial equipment nobody thinks about until it breaks. He brought in decent money but nothing spectacular. Enough for a 4-bedroom house with outdated appliances and a 2-car garage that could barely fit our aging Toyotas. Mom managed a small law office downtown, handling day-to-day operations for 3 attorneys who specialized in corporate law. She wore the same 5 outfits on rotation and complained about the partners' coffee habits more than she talked to me. On paper, we were a standard middle-class American family with a mortgage, 2 kids, and a Labrador retriever named Max, who was the only one who showed genuine enthusiasm when I walked in the room. I was always the quiet kid who flew under the radar. I pulled B's and C's without opening a textbook, was decent at basketball but never good enough to start, and spent most of my time gaming on a second-hand PC that I gradually upgraded with parts I bought mowing lawns and shoveling snow. My rig was a Frankenstein's monster, a case from a yard sale, a GPU from eBay, and RAM sticks from 3 different manufacturers, but I kept it running against all odds. I taught myself basic programming through YouTube tutorials and free courses, because nobody else was going to teach me. Nothing about me demanded attention, which became the defining characteristic of my childhood. I learned to cook my own meals by 12 because Mom was always too busy with Tina's appointments to make dinner. I figured out how to do my own laundry because my sports uniform would sit in the hamper for a week otherwise. Once, I broke my arm falling off my bike and sat in the ER waiting room alone for 3 hours because Dad was at Tina's speech therapy and couldn't leave. My sister Tina, a 26-year-old female, is 2 years younger and was born deaf. When my parents found out at her 3-month checkup, it was like a switch flipped in our house. Suddenly, everything, and I mean everything, revolved around Tina's hearing loss. My existence became a footnote in the family narrative. "Keep it down, Cody. Tina needs to rest. We can't afford new sneakers this month, Cody." Tina's specialist appointment was expensive. Our neighborhood was cookie-cutter boring, but my buddy Danny from across the street kept me sane. We met in 2nd grade when his family moved in, and by 3rd grade, he was practically living at our house, or more accurately, hanging out in the garage with me while my parents focused on Tina. Danny's family wasn't rich either, but his parents at least remembered he existed. His dad taught us both how to change a tire when we were 14, a skill my own father never bothered sharing with me. I built my first gaming rig at 14 with Danny. We spent an entire weekend putting it together after sourcing parts from Craigslist and discount sites. I scored a decent CPU when the local community college upgraded their computer lab, and Danny's older cousin gave us a graphics card that was obsolete for his CAD work but perfect for our needs. My parents didn't even notice I had a new computer for almost 2 weeks. That's how little they paid attention to what I was doing. When they finally did notice, my dad just asked if I'd wasted money on that video game junk again. Never mind that I was teaching myself a marketable skill that would eventually save me. The favoritism wasn't just subtle hints or slightly different treatment. It was blatant enough that even my teachers noticed. When I joined basketball in 5th grade, my parents showed up to exactly 2 games that entire season, the first one and the championship game we lost. Meanwhile, when Tina started in a deaf volleyball league in 7th grade, they never missed a single match. They'd reschedule work, cancel other plans, and even call in sick sometimes. The message was clear. Her activities mattered. Mine didn't. My room wasn't even fully mine. During finals week of my junior year, they moved my gaming setup to the garage so Tina could use my bedroom as her study space because she needed a quiet environment to focus. The irony of a deaf person needing quiet was completely lost on them. Danny helped me move everything, watching the whole scene play out. "Dude, your parents play favorites so hard it's embarrassing," he told me afterward. My mom would spend hours helping Tina with homework, researching the best learning techniques for deaf students, taking sign language classes, and driving her to specialized programs across the state. Me? Figure it out yourself, Cody. You need to learn independence. That was code for, we don't have time or energy for you. You get the picture. Now, don't get me wrong, I liked my sister. Tina was never the villain. She was just a kid like me who didn't ask for any of this. She was smart, determined, and honestly pretty funny when she wanted to be. The problem was never Tina herself. It was how my parents weaponized her needs against me. They used her disability as an excuse to give her everything while giving me nothing when they could have supported both of us. Senior year, I got my first real job at a local electronics store. The pay was garbage, but the employee discount let me upgrade my rig for cheap. More importantly, I had money that wasn't controlled by my parents. I stashed every cent I could in a savings account Danny's mom helped me open, though the amount seemed pathetically small compared to what I'd need for college. My grandfather, my dad's father, was the only adult in the family who actually saw me as a person worth investing in. Grandpa Joe had worked construction his whole life, built his own house with his bare hands in the 70s, and had the calloused hands to prove it. He'd take me fishing at a little lake about an hour outside of town, teaching me how to change the oil in a car, fix a leaky faucet, and all those practical skills my dad never bothered with. Most importantly, he actually listened when I talked about wanting to design video games. He didn't dismiss it as a waste of time like my parents did. "You've got a good head for problem solving, Cody," he'd tell me while we were waiting for fish to bite, his tackle box organized with a precision that would make Marie Kondo proud. "Those games you're always playing? They're built by people not much different from you. No reason you couldn't do that too if you put your mind to it." Every Christmas he'd slip me a $50 bill. Not much, but it was reliably the only gift I'd get that wasn't socks or a generic t-shirt. More than once I caught him arguing with my dad about how they treated me. "The boy needs support, John, not just a roof," I overheard once before Dad changed the subject. When Grandpa Joe died during my junior year from heart failure, I felt like I'd lost my only real advocate in the family. What I didn't expect was what came next. At the will reading, everyone was shocked when the lawyer announced, "To my grandson Michael, I leave $68,000 in a trust for his college education." My parents' faces went from grief to shock to something that looked almost like resentment in the span of about 5 seconds. For once in my life, I had a way forward that wasn't dependent on my parents' whims. A computer science degree at State University was suddenly within reach without crushing debt. The catch was that the trust named my parents as trustees. Not ideal, but I never imagined they'd stoop so low as to take what was explicitly left for me. In retrospect, I was naive for not seeing the warning signs. I spent my senior year researching computer science programs, focusing on schools with strong game development tracks. I got accepted to the State University's CS program, which had connections to several gaming studios for internships. When I told my parents, my dad just grunted and said we'd talk about finances later. I thought he was just being his usual self, uninterested in my achievements. A week before graduation, my parents invited my Aunt Susan, Dad's sister, and her husband for dinner. A perfect time to discuss college plans, I thought. I'd already been accepted, had roommate options lined up, and just needed to send in the housing deposit. I remember ironing my one decent button-up shirt for the occasion, thinking this was finally when things would turn around. What an idiot I was. "We need to discuss your college situation," my dad said, putting down his fork halfway through a particularly awkward dinner. "Yeah, I already got the housing forms. Just need to send the deposit by next Friday," I replied, thinking this was finally happening. My mom looked at my dad, who cleared his throat and delivered the line that would end our relationship. "Yeah, about that." We had to use that money for Tina's special education programs and to set up her college fund. The table went silent. My world collapsed in real time. I remember feeling like someone had replaced all my blood with ice water. "You did what?" "That was my money." "Grandpa left it for me," I said, trying to process what I was hearing. "The trust gave us discretion as trustees," my dad said coldly, like he was discussing a business transaction rather than stealing his son's future. "Tina's education at Brighton Academy for the Deaf gives her better opportunities. You can get loans for community college." Aunt Susan looked like someone hit her with a Windows XP error screen. "You spent it all, John? Your father specifically left that for Cody's education. Tina needed it more," my mom snapped, showing more emotion defending their decision than she'd shown toward me in years. "Do you know how expensive deaf education is? Cody is perfectly capable of supporting himself." "You're not parents," I said, standing up. "You're investors who decided early on that I wasn't worth the effort." "Well, congratulations. You've lost me as a son." I walked out, went to my room, and packed everything I could fit in my car. I heard arguing downstairs but couldn't make out the words over the ringing in my ears. I did a final sweep of my room, grabbed my external hard drives with all my programming projects, and walked out without saying another word. Danny's place was only a few blocks away. I didn't even have to call. One look at my face when he opened the door and he just stepped aside to let me in. "They did it, didn't they?" he asked. I just nodded, and he helped me carry my stuff inside. 2 days later, I got a weird text from Tina I didn't know. "I'm sorry, that was it. No follow-up." I didn't reply, but it stuck with me. Danny and his girlfriend Megan let me crash on their couch without hesitation. Their apartment wasn't big, a one-bedroom with barely enough space for the two of them, let alone a third wheel. But they treated me like family when my own couldn't be bothered. "Stay as long as you need, man," Danny told me that first night. "We'll figure it out." The text started rolling in the next day. Mom, you're being dramatic as usual. Come home and we'll discuss this like adults. Dad, man up and accept reality. Your sister needs this more than you do. Then they escalated. This is why we never thought you'd succeed in college anyway. You've always been the weak one who gives up. That last text was all I needed to see. I blocked them all and focused on survival. Danny's parents helped me get my paperwork in order so I could apply for financial aid. They didn't have money to spare, but they showed me how to navigate the system, apply for grants, and file for FAFSA as an independent student. His dad took me to the bank to open an account my parents couldn't access, and helped me work through the logistics of being on my own at 18. They even helped me get my birth certificate and social security card, which I had left behind in my rush to get out. I needed to make money fast. I applied to every retail and food service job within walking distance of Danny's place, but nothing came through right away. Danny's mom connected me with her brother, who managed a warehouse that needed temp workers. The pay was garbage, $10 an hour loading trucks in a non-air-conditioned building during summer, but it was something. I spent my days lifting boxes in 95-degree heat, coming home drenched in sweat so bad that Danny made me strip in the hallway before entering their apartment. My parents' final text came through my aunt's phone. Don't come back crying for help when you lose everything, loser. I took a screenshot. That message became my motivation, my wallpaper for the next 3 years. Every time I felt like giving up, I'd look at that message and think, I'll show them who the loser is. Aunt Susan reached out separately to apologize for what happened. Your dad and I had a huge fight after you left. What they did was wrong, and I told him so. I wish I could help financially, but we're stretched thin with my kids' college already. She became my only connection to family information over the next few years. The first month was brutal. I was sleeping on a couch, working 10-hour shifts at the warehouse, and trying to figure out how to afford community college. My car broke down again, forcing me to take the bus to work, adding an extra hour each way to my commute. The transit system was a joke, and I'd often wait 40 minutes for a bus that was supposed to come every 15. I was exhausted, angry, and starting to think maybe my parents were right about me being a loser. My diet consisted of whatever was cheapest at the grocery store. I got pretty good at cooking eggs a dozen different ways because protein was essential, and eggs were cheap. I had a spreadsheet tracking every penny I spent, color-coded by necessity. Danny's cousin, Derek, changed everything. He worked at a small indie game studio about 30 minutes away and mentioned they needed Q&A testers. $12 an hour to play broken games and document bugs, he explained over pizza at Danny's place. Pays bad, but the experience is gold if you want to get into development. I interviewed the next day. The studio was a converted warehouse space with about 15 people working on 2 different game projects. The office was held together by duct tape and caffeine, secondhand everything, exercise balls instead of chairs, and a coffee machine that predated YouTube. The founders were ex-EA developers who wanted to build their own thing after getting burned out on AAA crunch culture. They hired me on the spot when I mentioned I had taught myself basic C# and had built simple games as projects. The tech lead actually pulled up my GitHub profile during the interview. I didn't even know anyone looked at that. I enrolled in community college part-time, taking night classes in computer science while working days at the studio. Sleep became a luxury. I'd get home around 11 p.m. After evening classes, code personal projects until 3 a.m. Crash for a few hours, then do it all again. The warehouse job had been physically exhausting, but this new schedule was mentally draining in a whole new way. I went through energy drinks like water. My morning routine became a shower, 2 eggs, and enough caffeine to make my eyeballs vibrate. After 2 months at Danny's, I found a studio apartment I could actually afford. Studio was generous. It was a converted garage with a bathroom attached. The place had roaches, black mold in the bathroom that the landlord refused to address, and neighbors who fought loud enough to wake the dead at 2 a.m. But I made every rent payment on time. I furnished the place with items from Goodwill, Facebook Marketplace, and occasionally the curb on garbage day. My bed was a mattress on the floor, my desk was an old door laid across 2 filing cabinets, and my kitchen table was a plastic storage bin turned upside down. 6 months into this new life, Danny had an idea that would change everything. We were hanging out in my depressing apartment on a rare night when I wasn't coding or studying, playing the latest PUBG update. Danny's character had just been sniped while doing his signature move, running in straight lines across open fields, and he was waiting to respawn. We should start working on our own thing on the side, he said between matches. Derek's got industry connections from his job, I'm learning business management in my classes, and you're getting good at coding. We could build something together. With what time? I'm barely sleeping as it is, I replied. But the idea had already taken root. We don't need to rush it. Weekend warrior style. Build something small but polished that could get attention. We set up a shared cloud workspace and started building a demo for a game idea I'd been sketching out during lunch breaks. Every Friday night, we'd pool our cash for pizza and energy drinks and code until sunrise. Our business meetings happened at the cheapest diner in town, but we were dead serious about the work. We'd draft design documents on napkins while eating $4.99 breakfast specials, debate game mechanics over endless coffee refills, and sketch character concepts on the backs of receipts. 3 months into development, Derek introduced us to Kristen, a 3D artist fresh out of art school who was looking for portfolio work. She joined our weekend sessions, bringing talent we desperately needed. She was working as a barista to pay bills while trying to break into the industry, another person with potential who needed a chance. Kristen and I butted heads constantly at first. She was all about aesthetics and polish, while I was focused on making systems work. Nobody cares if your mechanics are perfect if the game looks like trash, she'd argue. And nobody cares how pretty it looks if it plays like garbage, I'd fire back. Our arguments were legendary, and Danny would often have to play mediator. But those passionate debates pushed our project further than agreement ever could. Our first prototype was garbage, but it was our garbage. We showed it to a few of Derek's EO workers, who gave us brutally honest feedback. The movement was floaty, the combat felt unsatisfying, and the procedural level generation created too many dead ends. Instead of getting discouraged, we rebuilt entire sections from scratch, staying up for 36 hours straight one weekend to hit a self-imposed deadline. The first year was brutal. I was working full-time, taking classes, and pouring every spare minute into our project. There were nights I fell asleep at my keyboard. My car finally died completely, forcing me to buy a cheap bicycle to get around. I got caught in the rain so many times that fall that I permanently smelled like wet clothes. But gradually, the pieces started falling into place. The game took shape, my skills improved, and my grades stayed solid despite everything. I got my associate's degree in computer science, made the dean's list despite everything, and leveraged my Q&A experience to land a junior developer position at the same studio. The pay bump to $42,000 felt like winning the lottery after scraping by for so long. Kristen and I clicked immediately, both workaholics with industry dreams and no safety nets. We started dating 6 months after she joined the team, keeping it professional during work sessions but spending what little free time we had together. Our first date was fixing my apartment's leaky faucet together because I couldn't afford a plumber, and she had watched enough YouTube tutorials to be dangerous. Somehow, not flooding my apartment became more romantic than any fancy dinner could have been. "You code like someone's chasing you," she told me once while watching me work through a particularly nasty bug in our game. She wasn't wrong. I was running from the future my parents had planned for me, where I amounted to nothing. Our project started gaining traction in indie developer forums. We created a basic demo that showcased our core gameplay mechanics, a roguelike with a twist on traditional progression systems. Derek leveraged his industry contacts to get us feedback from professional developers. The notes were harsh but constructive, focusing on our combat system and level generation. One senior developer from a major studio spent 3 hours on a video call with us, breaking down everything from our animation timing to our UI flow. Working out of my apartment became impossible as our team expanded, so we converted Danny's garage into a makeshift studio. His parents were supportive, even running an extra internet line out there for us. We set up 3 workstations with second-hand monitors and computers, decorated the walls with concept art and whiteboards for tracking bugs. Our server was literally a desktop under a desk with a paper sign that read "Kick equal to your fired" taped to it. We installed an old window AC unit that made noise like a dying whale but kept the temperature just below actual oven during summer. We hit roadblocks constantly. Our first attempt at securing development funding failed miserably. The investor took one look at our operation and decided we weren't serious enough. The game engine we chose initially couldn't handle what we were trying to build, forcing us to pivot to a different technology stack. 6 months in, Danny and I had a massive fight about the business direction that nearly ended the project and our friendship. He wanted to target casual mobile gamers for quick revenue, while I was adamant about building something with depth for PC. We didn't speak for 3 days until Kristen locked us in the garage together with a whiteboard and refused to let us out until we had a plan both of us could live with. Through it all, we kept grinding. I became the bug fixer guy, the one who could step in when something was broken and nobody knew why. I developed a sixth sense for tracking down weird edge cases and memory leaks. My sleep schedule was permanently wrecked, but my debugging skills became legendary in our small team. I transferred to State University to finish my bachelor's degree, still working and developing our game. It took longer than the traditional route, but I finally got that computer science degree my grandfather wanted for me. I missed the graduation ceremony because I was fixing a critical bug for our demo build, but the diploma still hangs on my wall, the first thing I see every morning when I wake up. Money remained tight. I moved to a slightly better apartment closer to campus, but it was still bare bones. But my internet was faster, my computer was better, and most importantly, I was making measurable progress. I even sprang for a desk chair that didn't make my back feel like I'd been hit by a truck, which felt like the height of luxury after 3 years of sitting on a folding chair. Kristen stood by me through the all-nighters, the stress-induced breakdowns, and the moments of doubt. She believed in what we were building even when I didn't. When I almost quit after a major technical setback, she showed up at my apartment with energy drinks and takeout. "We're not stopping now," was all she said. By year 2, we had a working prototype that was good enough to show potential investors. Danny had transformed from my childhood friend into a legitimate business manager, handling our paperwork and pitches while Derek and I focused on development. Danny had a natural talent for the business side. He secured us a spot at a small indie game showcase where we could demo our work to actual publishers. The showcase changed everything. Our booth was literally a folding table with laptops, but our game stood out. A scout from Meridian Games, a mid-sized publisher known for taking chances on indie projects, spent over an hour playing our demo. 2 weeks later, we were negotiating our first publishing deal. The negotiations were tense. Danny insisted on keeping our IP rights, even when it meant less upfront money. It was the right call, though we didn't know it at the time. 28 months after starting our project, we secured actual funding. The contract with Meridian wasn't massive, $225,000 to finish development with revenue sharing on the back end. But it was enough to quit our day jobs and focus entirely on our game. We moved into a real office space. The location wasn't glamorous, but the rent was reasonable, and for the first time, we had legitimate signage with our company name. We hired 2 more developers with the funding, both recent grads hungry for experience. Our team of 6 worked insane hours, but now we were paying ourselves actual salaries. I was making $55,000, less than I could have earned elsewhere with my experience, but I owned 30% of our company. The potential upside was worth the temporary sacrifice. I moved to an apartment that actually had separate rooms and a dishwasher that worked. It felt like moving into a mansion after years of living in what amounted to a large closet. The game development was intense. We rebuilt entire systems from scratch to make them more scalable. Kristen reworked every character model and environment to elevate the visual quality. I personally rewrote our procedural level generation algorithm 7 times before it felt right. Our combat system went through so many iterations that we joked about having PTSD from playtesting the same scenarios hundreds of times. "If I have to kill that first boss one more time, I'm going to lose my mind," became our team's running joke. Our game launched on Steam 9 months later and exceeded everyone's expectations, hitting the indie charts and generating positive reviews from players and critics alike. We weren't millionaires, but the revenue was steady enough to fund our next project with a much larger scope. We immediately started work on our second title with a much bigger budget and a team that had now grown to 11 people. Through my Aunt Susan, I occasionally heard updates about my family. Dad had been laid off at 54. Apparently, his company downsized and decided a middle manager with an outdated skill set wasn't worth keeping. They had taken out a second mortgage to help Tina buy a condo after graduation. They drained their retirement accounts and were struggling to make ends meet. The money they'd stolen from me was long gone, and now they were facing the consequences of their financial decisions. Karma's a beast. Kristen and I moved in together, renting a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. For the first time since leaving home, I had actual furniture that wasn't salvaged from dumpsters or thrift shops. My credit score had recovered from the disaster of my early independence. I bought a new car. I bought real groceries instead of whatever was on clearance. These small luxuries felt enormous after years of deprivation. Our second game did even better than the first. Gaming sites were writing about our breakthrough indie studio. We hired 4 more developers. Danny handled the business side flawlessly, negotiating contracts that gave us creative control while securing our financial future. We were approached by 3 different major publishers about acquisition. We turned them all down, preferring to maintain our independence, but the validation felt incredible. The studio that started in a garage with leftover pizza and energy drinks was now being courted by industry giants. I bought my first house at 27, a modest 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood with a dedicated office space for remote work. Kristen moved in and transformed it from a house into a home. My grandfather would have been proud to see what his investment in me eventually created, even if it took a much different path than he might have imagined. We'd already made it. They just didn't know it yet. 3 years after walking out, my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized, my mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Cody, it's been a long time. We miss you. Would you come for dinner this Sunday? Tina will be there too. I agreed. Part of me wanted to show them what they'd missed out on. Part of me wanted closure. Kristen thought it was a mistake, but supported my decision to go. Just remember who you are now, she told me as I left. Don't let them pull you back into old patterns. I drove to my childhood home in my new car, immediately noticing the peeling paint and overgrown lawn. The place had deteriorated noticeably. The front steps were cracked, and the gutter was hanging loose on one side. Their financial situation was written all over the property. The garage door was dented in a way it hadn't been when I lived there, and Dad's prized Weber grill was missing from the deck. My mom hugged me awkwardly at the door. My dad nodded from his recliner, looking older and thinner than I remembered. Tina was already there, signing rapidly with them. She gave me a genuine smile when I walked in. At least there was that. Dinner was awkward small talk. How's work? Fine. How's your apartment? It's a house now, actually. Finally, over coffee and store-brand cookies, my dad cleared his throat. Son, we've hit a rough patch. The bank is threatening foreclosure. I've been struggling to find good work since the layoff. We thought maybe you could help us out, just until I find a new position. I took a sip of coffee to hide my smile. How much are you behind? My dad looked relieved that I was asking. About $28,000, plus some credit card debt from helping Tina with her expenses. I set down my mug carefully, wanting to savor this moment. So, you stole $68,000 that my grandfather left specifically for my education. You told me I wasn't worth investing in. You made me sleep on a couch and work warehouse jobs instead of going to college. And now that you're facing consequences, you want me to bail you out? My mom's face hardened. We raised you, the bare minimum required by law, I cut in. You gave her everything and me nothing, and now you want my help? To my surprise, Tina spoke up. They're wrong, Cody. I didn't know about the trust fund until last year. They should have never taken what Grandpa left you. My parents looked stunned at her betrayal. Mom started to sign something rapidly, but Tina shook her head and continued speaking, signing simultaneously. What they did to you was wrong. I didn't see it growing up, but looking back, it was obvious. I'm sorry I was part of it, even unknowingly. I owe you nothing, I said firmly, addressing my parents. You made it clear where I stood in this family, the backup, the afterthought, the investment not worth making. Well, now I'm successful despite you, and you're asking for handouts. We're still your parents, my dad said, desperation creeping into his voice. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family, I replied. You weren't my family when I needed you. Danny's parents were more my family than you ever were. My team at work is more my family than you. I stood up to leave. Tina followed me to the door. I'd like to stay in touch, she said, without them involved. I gave her a nod and walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight of seeking their approval was finally gone. That was 2 years ago. My parents lost the house. Dad works at a hardware store, making a third of his former salary. Mom found a part-time receptionist position. They've sent more desperate messages about medical bills and rent through flying monkeys, mutual acquaintances and distant relatives who just happened to mention my parents' struggles. I haven't responded. Tina visits every few months. She's building her own life, independent of our parents. She got a better job in marketing and is taking classes to expand her skills. We're slowly developing the sibling relationship we never had growing up. It turns out she's pretty cool when she's not being used as a weapon against me. She's even helped us test our games for deaf accessibility features. Our studio was acquired last year by one of the major publishers on our terms, with guaranteed creative independence and significant earnouts. We kept our core team intact and maintained control of our development process, conditions that were non-negotiable for us. The corporate suits weren't thrilled, but our track record spoke for itself. We're working on our third title with a full team of 20 people now, including 3 other developers who are in similar starting from zero situations. Kristen and I are expecting our first child. We found out it's a boy last month. We're naming him Joseph, after my grandfather. After the whole thing, I realized one thing: the real revenge is watching the people who hurt you need something only you can provide and walking away. It's building a life so good that their absence improves it rather than diminishes it. Some cycles are meant to be broken.